Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the discussion. My name's Keith. Today what I want to talk about is the idea of free college. And a lot of politicians have been throwing the idea around, particularly coming up on an election year. So I thought it'd be a good topic to discuss. So before I get into it, before we can solve really any problem, we have to figure out what's caused the problem. How do we get into this problem to begin with? And what I'm talking about is the problem of high costs of college. Only 20, 30 years ago, this wasn't really so much of an issue. I mean, people were able to pay off their college debt or their college school tuition while they were going to school, just with a side job. And of course, that doesn't seem to be the case now. So to give you an idea of what the costs were, according to the National Center for Education and Statistics, in 1985 to the 1986 school year, a four-year institution, all institutions, so private and public, averaged around $4,885 in tuition per year. In 2016 and 17, that number was $23,091. And again, that's both public and private, the average cost. So to put those numbers into perspective, according to a CNBC study, a 1988 graduate of Harvard University would have spent $17,100 on tuition during their senior year. Now, in their 50s, that same person would have to pay $44,990 in tuition for their child to attend Harvard today. So that makes the current cost more than 2.5 times as much as it was in 1988. So a markup of it's about roughly 163%. So what's changed that's caused the prices to skyrocket in such a way? And the answer is that the government got involved. And it's crazy because in my experience of studying so many of these things, what I find is that the more times that the government gets involved, problems don't go away. If anything, new problems are created. So, and I'm going to explain. In 1965, the U.S. government passed what was called the Higher Education Act. And what this did was this guaranteed loans to college students. And what that meant was it didn't matter, what collateral they had, what their debt or credit history was. It didn't matter even what their future potential careers might be. The government was going to back up their loans if they wanted to go to college. So just like any conventional loan, you have to kind of prove so many things. You have to prove that you can pay a loan. You have to prove that you have paid your debts before. And, just various things, kind of loopholes or obstacles that you have to kind of overcome in order to obtain a loan. Well, now the government doesn't matter. You're an 18-year-old kid. If you apply for a government-backed loan, you will get the loan. So that kind of created the snowball. And then in the mid-1980s, just to kind of give you an idea of what's happened, the limit that a person could take out per year for college on a government-backed loan was $2,500. Now, fast forward to 2013, and the limit became $31,000. So that means, again, an 18-year-old kid every year can take out $31,000, and the government will guarantee it, will back it up. And it doesn't matter what their previous credit history was. It doesn't matter if they can prove that the career that they're going for will actually be able to cover the costs of the debt that they're accruing by taking out that amount of money. The government will give it to you anyway. All right, so what happened? Once colleges saw this and said, wait a minute, the government's backing up X amount of dollars, well, shoot, now we could pretty much charge whatever we want. That new gym or that new rec center that we wanted, man, let's start building it because we'll just raise tuition costs and that'll cover it. And then it makes our college more marketable because now we can say we have a new rec center or that new courtyard that we were thinking of building. Let's add that too to the tab. And we could raise tuitions and put the costs on the kids because the kids will take out the loans. The government's going to back it up anyway, so they can still come to our university and they'll cover the cost of that. So tuition, because of that, by default, went up. Also, what it did was it created a higher demand because now students knew, hey, I can, anybody could take out a loan from the government, and it allowed more people to go to college. Now, that's a good thing. But what it did was it increased demand. And, and economics 101, when you increase demand and the supply stays about the same, what's going to happen? Costs are going to go up. So again, because demand rose, the cost of tuition also rose as well. So that's kind of the different things that created the problem that we're dealing with today, which is the high cost of tuition. And a lot of it was because the government decided to get involved. So I think Ronald Reagan said in his 1981 inaugural address, it's kind of famous. He famously said that government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And I think that that could be said about this current situation with college debt and college loans. So these are my problems with the idea of giving free college tuition. And it's threefold. The first thing is, aside from the thing that I just talked about, that I alluded to, that how the government gets involved and it creates more problems, my first issue is just the cost. Just to pay the current debt off right now of every student who's gone to college, it would cost the government $1.5 trillion. Now, that's on top of the already almost $23 trillion that we've accrued in debt as a national government. So, we kind of, as a society, have kind of been kicking the stone down the road and hoping that we'll never really have to deal with it. But there will be a reckoning when it comes to the debt, the national debt. A lot of people have talked about climate change and how that's an imminent threat to society. Well, this debt that we've built up over the last, couple of decades, this is also an imminent threat, an economic threat to our society. And it's something that we have to talk about. It's something that we have to deal with. And Republicans, Democrats are both kind of ignoring the issue. But, just adding to it and piling onto it is gonna create more problems down the road for our children and our children's children. And it's just not a good thing. So next, I think it's just the unfairness of it. Right? Sounds good, right? For free college. It sounds pretty fair to me, right? Everybody gets free college. But what you're essentially asking is people who were responsible enough to pay off their college loans, right? Maybe they went to a community college for the first 2 years and then went to a 4-year college, state school for the next 2 years in order to save money. Or maybe they worked hard and sacrificed so much going out and partying or doing whatever it was, or even sacrificing after college, pushing off buying a home or buying the car that they wanted. They made these decisions so that they could pay off their debts. And now they're saying, hey, I'm debt free now. Now I can live my life. And what you're doing by causing the government to pay for it, because it's not the government who's paying for it, right? It's us through our taxes. You're essentially asking that person who already paid off their college loans to now cover the tab for people who weren't as responsible. For the person who just decided to go to whatever college they wanted to go to. They didn't think about how much they were taking out or the future job prospects that they had and whether that was going to be able to cover the tab. So you're asking other people who are responsible to cover the tab for people who are, at times irresponsible. And that's not always the case, but, maybe even generally speaking, that could be the case. Also, what you're doing is you're asking people who never went to college for whatever reason to cover the cost of those who chose to go to college. Now, on average, a person who didn't go to college makes, $17,500 less than a person who did go to college. So I think over the course of a lifetime, it's about $1 million less. A person, who didn't go to college makes about $1 million less than somebody who did go to college. And you're asking that person to now take on the burden of paying for somebody who chose to go to college. And that person who chose not to go to college can have, numerous reasons of why they didn't want to go to school. And that's okay. I mean, right? This is a free country. So if they wanted to, work, maybe start working in a trade or they started early in a business or whatever it may be, you're now asking that person who didn't reap the benefits or the rewards of going to a 4-year degree to cover the cost of people who are experiencing or receiving those rewards. And it's not fair. And then lastly, I think this is just a little bit more philosophical. Nothing in life is free, and you learn this at an early age, hopefully. So besides the burdensome taxes that would be implemented in order to pay for this, I think that we're sacrificing more than we really bargained for if we go in this route. We sacrifice the potential to be a nation of people who are grateful, who work hard for what they earn, and when they have it, they're thankful and grateful for it, to creating a society where people feel entitled, like they deserve something just because, they're breathing. And that's what giving free stuff does. It creates an entitled mindset, an entitled generation. And I think that the consequences of that can be severe, and it may not be something that we can calculate or something that we can put numbers on, but it is definitely something that I think can have a detrimental effect on our society, shifting the mindset of a grateful people to an entitled people. You think about the greatest generation who experienced adversity through the Great Depression and through World War II. And because of that, they worked hard. They had that attitude of pull yourself by your own bootstraps. And it made the country that we live in and that we enjoy the fruits of today. What happens if we start to shift that into a people who are more in a place where they feel like they deserve things just because? So I have 3 solutions. What are the solutions then? Do we just leave it the way it is? No. My 3 solutions is this. Number 1, the government should stop guaranteeing loans, and the yearly loan limit should be greatly reduced. So the government shouldn't back any loan just because you want to go to college. Just like any conventional loan, you should have to prove your credit history. You prove that maybe the career you're going for, the degree that you're getting is marketable and that you could pay back the loan. And then the lender can make that decision as to whether or not to loan you the money. And if the government's going to back a portion of it, then it should be severely, it needs to be reduced greatly, not 31,000 or more a year. We're talking maybe 5 to 10,000, if that. Number 2, loans should be given on the simple basis of return on investment, right? If you're going to school to be an engineer or, to study medicine or to study computer science, think jobs that are in demand and that pay well. I think that banks should be able to say, hey, you know what? Chances are if you graduate with this degree, you're going to make X amount of dollars. And because of that, we're able to give you a loan for this amount because we know you're going to cover it. As opposed to somebody who, let's say, says, I want to study art history and get a degree. Well, that's fine. That's your prerogative. That's your choice. But, on average, a person who has an art history degree makes this much. So the bank will say, okay, well, we're only going to cover that amount of money because this is what the average person makes. And there's nothing wrong with being able to look at what a person's working towards and use that as a means to determine whether they're eligible to receive a certain amount of money. And then lastly, I think we need to implement something like what the UK has, which is a national, apprenticeship program. I think this is phenomenal. We've gone away from this idea of working with your hands is good and it's a valuable asset and a commodity. We've kind of gotten to this place where we believe that everybody's supposed to fit into the mold of a 4-year degree. And I think that really hurts a lot of young people who are growing up and maybe don't feel like they want to go to college for whatever reason, but maybe they really enjoy working with their hands or they really enjoy creating things. And in the UK, they allow students to make that choice early on as to whether they want to go to an education path or to a career path, again, a trade path. And if we could have kids by the 10th or 11th grade kind of start to think that way, we can get kids at a place where they're certified, they're trained up, even when they graduate high school, to work in certain trades like carpentry, electrical work, automotive repairs, welding, you name it. And what that does is it allows students or kids the opportunity to choose a different path for themselves that's not a 4-year college plan and do something else that might be more suited to them. It also drops the demand for people going into a 4-year university because now you have other people trying different avenues in order to make a living. So when you drop the demand in a 4-year college, again, prices will drop. So you have the demand is lower and you also have colleges that are not guaranteed the government-backed loans, so they can't just skyrocket their tuition costs. So I think if we do those 3 things, maybe among other things, it can be a start to bringing the cost down to a point where it's affordable and where we're not giving up too much as a society and as a culture. So the mindset has to shift away from, just focusing on everybody goes to college and the one size fits all, and maybe focus on different routes that we can go and allow students to choose their own path, give them other opportunities. And I think that will help to solve the problem. Well, let me know what you think. Comment, let me know if you agree, disagree, or if you even have different ideas. But this is the whole point of that. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you want to get notified anytime I post new content. And if you want to continue the discussion, write in the comment section whether you agree, disagree, or you have a whole nother take entirely. It'd be nice to continue the dialogue. Thanks again. God bless.